Let us look at some simple commands that we can use in Linux command line environment. We will make ourselves familiar with the command line environment by trying out some simple commands, and these are not going to change the system in any manner, and therefore you can try these out without any worry. The commands that we are going to look at are the following: to know the date and time at this moment, the calendar of this month, some statistics about the memory that is available, which groups does the current user belong to, in the directory listing that we are seeing in our home directory, what type of a file each entry corresponds to. Now let us explore some of these commands by using the command line environment. So we are using the terminal emulator called terminal in Ubuntu, and the bash shell is what is actually responding to our commands. So where are we first? We are in the home directory. We will verify that we are in the home directory, and we could then change the directory using the shortcuts. So we use the shortcut double dot to go to the parent directory, and we can do that once more to go to the root folder, and then we can go down the hierarchy, let us say to user and then to bin directory. Now from here we can go back to the home directory by simply pressing CD and then enter, and let us say we want to go and visit the directory again. We don't have to type user bin, we can just say CD and then a hyphen to indicate the previous directory we were in, and we will be placed in the previous directory that we were working in. Sometimes if the directory names are very long, this could be quite useful. And when we press CD, we come to the home directory, and as you would notice, if you press CD space dot, then nothing will happen, because that's like changing the directory to the current directory, which doesn't change anything. Now wherever we are, let us say we go to user bin, we could go to the home directory in multiple ways. There is a shortcut tilde which also will take you to the home directory. So you verify that you are in the home directory. So there are some characters that are actually indicating that they are aliases for certain directory entries. For example, dot is for the current directory, double dot is for the parent directory, and the tilde is for the home directory, and dash is for the directory that we were in the previous command. Okay, so I press now Ctrl L and clear the screen. Now we will have some useful commands to look at. Let us look at a command called date. It tells what is the current timestamp for this moment. So if you run it again and again, you would see that the seconds position, the number is changing. Now obviously this time need not be accurate, because it depends upon what you have configured, and you can also change it. We will learn how to do that at some point later. We could also have the output of the date command in multiple manners. So if you give it in with a command option minus capital R, it would give you the command output in the format called RFC 5322 standard. Okay, this is a standard that is used for email communications, and if you want, you could also display the output in many other formats. How do we find out what are the various ways? So we take the manual page of date command and look at that, and here you have some help to tell you which fields correspond to which part of the date timestamp, and then you can configure that to print the date in any manner that you would like. Okay, so I come out of this help by pressing Q. Now you could also have more information. I would clear the screen, and you could actually just type cal and you would see the calendar for the current month. You could also use this command to find out the calendar of any month. Let us say for the August month of 1947, let us look at the calendar, and it shows that we began our independent India on a Friday. Okay, and you could also give the month in other formats, so it would give you with the same output. You could also perhaps use a capital letter for the August, and that would also still work. Okay, so this is a pretty quick way of checking the calendar of any month of any year, and you may want to find out which day of the week you were born in using this command. Now you could also display the calendar in other formats. So you have the direction changed now, ncal would be a command which would give you calendar in a different orientation, which may be more useful for you depending upon the way you are used to looking at the calendar formats. And the options would still work the same way. ncal and then let us say August 1947, it would show you the calendar for that month in the different display orientation. There are some more commands that you would be interested to run to just check the statistics about the machine. And there's a command called free, and this shows what is the amount of memory that is available for free in this computer right now. And you can see that these numbers are not very readable, so we would actually type free and then -h as an option to make it human readable, and you would see that there is the total memory of this particular computer is 31 gigabytes, and out of that only 1.2 gigabytes is used, 26 gigabytes is free. Okay, so we are now not running very much, so most of the memory is free. And there's something called swap memory, which is basically used whenever the physical memory is exceeded by the number of programs that are running, and one can also look at whether that is being occupied, and you see that we are not occupying anything in the swap memory, which is a good thing, because most of the usage, if it is in the physical memory, then it will be fast, and if there is any requirement to use a swap memory, then it would be drastically slow, because swap memory is actually stored on the disk, and the disk is much slower than the actual physical memory, also referred to as random access memory. Okay, there's a command called groups. If you run, you would see what are the groups to which you belong to. Okay, the current user is belonging to. So this current user is belonging to a group called sudo, which means that the current user is also a super user. Okay, and this can be changed by adding ourselves to more groups. So there's a group by the same name as the user, which is also to ensure that there's a privacy with the certain files that nobody else can actually use. In this computer, there are not many users, and therefore there are not many groups either. Now let us look at the long listing of the directory structure. So we have learnt it earlier, and if you put -l option to the ls command, then you would see the long listing. So here is the typical output of the ls-l command, and you would see that there is this output which is given for as an example. So the very first character tells you what type of a file it is. So the D will say that it's a directory that we are talking about. And then there are 9 characters which would be RWX with any of the 3 positions replaced with a hyphen in case that particular permission is not available. The first 3 characters refer to the permissions of the owner. The second set of 3 characters are permissions of the group. The third set of characters are for the others, that is any other user in the particular Linux system. Whoever is logged on can be considered as part of the others group. And then the number after that corresponds to the number of hard links. What do we mean by a hard link? We will come to in a moment. And then there are 2 names that are given here. The first name corresponds to the owner. So who is owning this particular entry documents? That owner is displayed here. The second entry is for the group. So sometimes you may want to have the ownership of any folder to be a group to which you are part, so that a set of users can collaborate to work on a particular directory together. So you should understand that Unix or Linux come from a time when multiple users are logged on to a mainframe computer and are sharing files and working collaboratively, and therefore the file system has these features built in already. By default, there is always a group by the same name as the user, and therefore such folders are basically private to particular user. Then this number here corresponds to the size in terms of bytes, how much size is occupied by that particular folder. And then comes the timestamp. So when was the last time it was modified? This directory was modified. That is given as a timestamp. And in the case the year is different, the year also would be appearing here. And then lastly, the name of the file is given. So we will now dissect and look at each of these possibilities in detail. So in the very first character, if you see a hyphen, it means that it's a regular file. Regular file as in It could be a script, it could be a text file, it could be an executable, and so on. So what we normally refer to as a file is what it is if there is a hyphen in the very first entry of the long listing of the directory structure. Now if the first character happens to be D, it means it's a directory. So under that there will be other files or other directories. Usually most of our work in the Linux command line environment would be restricted to only these two types of files most of the time. Now the third character that you would be alerted is about the L, which is a symbolic link. We have already seen that once. C indicates that it's a character file and B indicates it's a block file. So block file and character files are typically devices. So the character file would be the terminal typically, and the block file would be the hard disk, and we normally don't mess around with those files unless we know what we are doing. If the first character happens to be S, that means it's a socket file. That means it's actually a process that is actually running behind. You can have two-way communication with that particular file, which means that a network device would open a socket and listen to the incoming connections, and would also be able to send out the data. A two-way communication is possible, and it would be actually a process that is doing this activity behind. It's not actually a static file, and this is indicated by the character S in the first position of the long listing of the directory structure. If the first character happens to be P, it means it's a named pipe. That means there is a process behind which is acting to communicate, and it would be a one-way communication, and you could actually see that you can't send the data, but you could actually read the data that is output by that particular process. So whenever you see any directory listing, if the first character happens to be a hyphen or a D, that means it is in a familiar territory as what we are normally used to. If the first character happens to be C or B or S or P, then you should be careful with such files, because you should know what you are doing when you try to modify those files. Now to understand what is a hard link, we need to know what is an inode. So you can actually find out the inode numbers for every file entry by using the option -i when we are running the ls command. Normally in Linux and in Unix environments, whenever we need to give an input as an argument, that argument is listed in the text as this manner with the angular brackets and some entry there. So it is an indication that you need to provide something there as an input. It's not as if you have to actually use angular brackets. It's just a placeholder for the argument that you are going to give. So I will illustrate that with a command line just in a moment. So inode is actually an entry in the file system table about the location in the storage medium, and it will be unique for every unique file. So if there are multiple entries in the file system that has the same inode, it means that they are all hard links. Now a little bit details about the permission string also before we go to the command line. So the permissions can be changed, but the way we understand the permission strings are, the first character R indicates that you have the read permission. The second character, if it is W, it means that you can write to that particular file, and X indicates that it can have executable permission. And if the file happens to be a directory, then X would mean that you can change to the directory. Okay, and the first three characters are meant for the owner. The second set of three characters are meant for the group. The third set of three characters are meant for the others. Now there is a numerical way that you can also represent this particular permission string, and here I am writing it as 755. Why I am doing that is because the three characters can be represented as on and off switches in binary format. So you would have 1 here, 2 here, and then a 4 here. So if you take 4, it means you are giving read permission. If you are writing 5, that means you are giving read and executable permission. And if you are giving 7, you are giving all three permissions. Okay, so the details are here. Typical permissions that you would set are indicated by these numbers here from 1 to 7, and the permission string that is written here is indicated by 755. We would use this numerical value when we are changing the permission. Let us try to explore the permissions, how to change them, and the ability to create files, delete them, moving them around, organizing them into folders, etc. in this brief exercise. So we open the terminal emulator and the bash shell is running, responding to our commands. So where are we now? We are at the home directory. Now when I press ls-l, we see the long format and we see that there are a bunch of folders here. What permissions do I have for my home directory? To know that, I need to go one level up and look at the permissions. So I go cd double dot and then type ls-l, and we see that for the folder which is named after my username, the permission string says rwx for the owner. The owner is same as my user ID, and the w says that it is having write permission, which means that I can create files or folders within my home directory, which is expected. Also, you would notice that the rest of the permissions for the group or for others is all empty, which means that I have not given permissions for any other user to do anything in my home directory, which is also a standard practice. So I now go back to my home directory with the cd and clear the screen with Ctrl L, and let us try to create some files to see how we are able to use this permission to organize files. So let me make a directory mkdir and then let us say level 1. Okay, so I am creating a directory called level 1. Let me check what I have done just now. Okay, so you see that there is a new folder here, level 1, and it is actually a directory, and there are some default permissions that have been given. Okay, it has some permissions that are given for the group and for others, so that they are able to actually read and change over to the directory. R and X permissions were given. Okay, so this depends upon what is called a umask, which we will come to a little later. Now I want to change these permissions so that they look like rest of the folders also. So what I would do is, first I would like to knock off the write permissions for the group. So I would use chmod and then group minus w, which for the group remove the write permission, and for which file? For the folder called level 1. So I can see whether the group permissions have been changed. So let us look at the directory again, and you can now see the difference here. So there's a w here in the second set of permission string for the level 1 folder, and here you could see that that permission has been removed using this command chmod group minus w g minus w level 1. Now let us remove the executable permission also, and for that what I would do is chmod and chmod g minus x level 1, and I now need to look at the output once more, long listing of the files in this folder, and you could now see that for the group the executable permission has also been removed for the folder called level 1. Okay, now we can actually change the permissions by using this string where chmod and then the first string would be u if it is for the user, or g if it is for the group, or o if it's for the others, and then if you would use plus, that means give the permission. If you use minus, then remove the permission. After that the permission can be r or w or x, whichever it is. Okay, now what I am doing is that others I am removing the x permission, executable permission, for the folder level 1, let us say, and let us look at the output, and you would see that here for others executable permission was originally there, but it is now removed. Okay, now you can actually do this one permission at a time, but as we have seen in the slides, you can give a numerical value as an option to the chmod command with the argument which is the folder for which you are changing the permissions, in such a way that in one go you can make the permissions appear as you would like. So let us say I want to give the permission such that read, write and executable are there for the owner and no permission is there for others or for the group. Then I would write it as chmod 700 then level 1. Okay, and let us look at the output now, and you would see that all the folders are looking with the same permission, and here you can see for the folder level 1 I have removed the permissions. Okay, so we know now we have created a folder called level 1 using make dir, and then we have adjusted the permissions as per our wish. Now we can go into the folder and see what is there. cd level 1, and you can see that it is empty because we have not put anything else in that folder. Okay, now let us create a file, an empty file, using the touch command. Touch command is used actually to change the timestamp of last modified information about that particular file or folder, and in case the file doesn't exist, then it will be created, and that is one way by which you can create empty files. So using the touch command we will create. So let us say file 1, okay, touch file 1, and let us look at the output. Now you would see that there is a file there and it has just been created, and the name of the file is file 1. Okay, and there are some default permissions that were also given. Now we will make the default permissions again changed according to chmod. So let us say chmod, and let us say 700 file 1, and you will see that the permissions have been modified. So like this we can actually adjust the permissions of any file or folder. We have seen that we have done it for the folder called level 1 and for a file called file 1. Okay, now we can actually make a copy of this file using the cp command. Okay, copy the file to a new name. Let us say new name is file 2, and now let us look at it. So there are two files, of course both are empty, but we have made a copy of the first file, okay, using the command cp and then old file name followed by the new file name. The three fields are separated by a blank space between them. Okay, now you want to move these around. Okay, let us say you want to move the file to one level up, okay, to the home directory. So you could just say mv, that is to move file to double dot. Double dot is a short name for the parent directory. So if you do this, what happens is the file 2 is going to go into the home directory. Let us check if it has been done. So first of all, the file is not available in this particular folder. Let us go to one level above and check, and sure enough the file has been found in the home directory because we have moved it one level up from the folder called level 1. Now you, apart from making a copy, you can also use the mv command to move the files around, and also you can, mv command can also be used to rename files. So let us rename the file 2 as something else. You can give a new name here, so we can say file 2a, and let us look at the listing, and you can see that the file name has been changed from file 2 to file 2a. Okay, so you can change it whichever way you like. Now sometimes you may want to have a space between two different words as a part of the file name, in which case you have to use the quotation symbol, and let us also do that here. So I will create a new file here called, let us say, file 1. Okay, file 1, and then I change the permission, and then you can see that the permissions have been changed, and now I want to rename it to something else. So I will use mv command file 1, and I want to rename it such that there is a space between two words. So say file 1. Okay, now let us see how it looks like. You can see that the file has been renamed, and there is a quotation symbol to indicate that these two are separate words of the same file name, and there is a space between them. So when we want to now change permissions, we cannot use this file name without using the quotation symbols, because then it will have a mistake if we use it without the quotes, because it would think that the space between the two words is actually a field separator for two different files. How is it? Let us just check this out. So let us say I want to change the permission chmod, and let us say 700, the same permission, and let us say file 1, and you see that it is complaining, saying that there are no such files. However, when we try to do this way by giving a quotation symbol, then it works, and whenever a Linux command works fine, it actually doesn't give you any output on the screen, because the philosophy of Unix, which has been passed on to Linux, is of no nonsense, namely don't throw any output if everything worked fine. Okay, now let us say we want to remove this file. So there's a command called rm, using which we can remove the files. Rm is a file, okay, and okay, rm file 1. Okay, and it is asking me whether I should remove it or not, and I say yes. Okay, now normally if you use it very first time, it doesn't ask because the default behavior is not to ask. I have made an alias for the remove command where I pass on the option -i. Okay, so let us look at the help for the command rm. If you see here, -i option is there, -i option is there, so that for every removal there's a prompting. Okay, so it is a problem if you have lot of files to be removed, if it keeps prompting, but for newbies it's a good idea to let it be there so that you are careful. Now how do you set that alias? Okay, so that is done by using a command called alias rm is equal to rm space -i. Okay, now the alias actually is to make it ask every time. If you use this command, then it will ask every time. Okay, so you can try it out so that you can check whether it prompts you when you want to remove files. Always try to do these commands on empty files that you have created using the touch command, so that there is no loss of data if you tried it on any other file that was useful for you. Okay, now let us go forward to explore more features. So let me clear the screen now. Okay, now the file 2a is in the home directory. Now let us say I want to move it back to the level 1. So we could do that by using the mv command, mv file 2a to level 1. And you see that it is disappeared from the home directory, and I change the directory to level 1, and I see the output, and it is there in the level 1 folder. Okay, one level below. Okay, so we have now been able to create empty files and move them around, copy them, and also delete them if we don't need. Okay, now one concept called hard link is something that we need to get familiarized just to understand what is this number that is coming here in this string. Okay, so that is actually the number of hard links, and we mentioned about the inode number in the context of it, and we can actually look at the inode numbers to understand what is that. Okay, so look at the folder called level 1. It has 2 hard links. So what are those 2 hard links? Okay, so to understand that, we should get the inode number. So I would do that here, ls minus li, and then you can see that there are some additional numbers that are printed in front of the long listing of the file system here. And for level 1, if you see here, this is the inode number. Okay, this is the inode number. We will note it down and keep it safe to compare. Now let us go into the level 1 directory. Okay, and let us look at the long listing with the inode number, but also with every file that is there, including the dot and double dot. Okay, so -a option is to have dot and double dot. Now you can combine options with one single minus hyphen. That's quite acceptable. Okay, now you see that the dot which is there, which is the current directory, has the same inode number. You can see here, same inode number as level 1 here. A location for the directory level 1 has the inode number which is highlighted here, okay, and also here, and it has 2 entries in the file system, one for the directory called level 1 which is in the home directory, and then there's another directory called dot which is under the level 1. So there are basically 2 hard links. Why are we saying that there are 2 hard links? Because they are basically having the same inode number, and that's the reason why when you look at this number here, it says 2. Okay, now what would happen when we look at the subdirectories? This number will keep increasing as the number of subdirectories get created. Okay, so let us look at that now. So in the level 1, I make a directory called level 2. Okay, now I look at the same option and I see that the number of hard links has increased to 3. So where is the third hard link? Well, you can understand that when you go inside the level 2 and look at that, the parent directory from there is the same inode number as the level 1. So the third inode is basically here the double dot under the subdirectory. So as the number of subdirectories increases, the number of hard links also keeps increasing, and one needs to basically look at this number to understand how many different entries are there in the file system. Now most of the simple files, regular files that are having a dash in the front of the long listing of the file will actually have only one hard link, which means that this is the only file, and if you delete this, that means that particular file has disappeared. Now if there are more hard links, it means that if you delete one such entry, there are other entries which may still be existing, and for regular files such a possibility is very much there, and we will come to the use of that in backup systems at certain later point of time. Okay, for now let us now go back to the home directory, and as we have discussed earlier, tilde is a alias for the home directory. I can just press tilde and go to the home directory. So where am I? I am in the home directory. I can actually now go back to the same directory with a dash, and we will go back to the level 2 directory again. So the dash is a alias for the previous directory that we were using, and tilde is a alias for the home directory that we started from. Okay, and now I clear the screen with Control L. Okay, so till now we have been seeing where we have permissions, namely in the home directory, and where we were able to create files and also do some reorganization of files. Now let us see whether we get errors when we try to do that in a folder where we are not supposed to try that out. So let us go to the system folder. Don't be afraid, you can just try it out and then see how the system is actually preventing you from doing any damage to the operating system inadvertently. Okay, so let me go to the root folder. Okay, where am I? I am in the root folder. Okay, and you see that this particular folder, everything is owned by root. You can see that it's everything is owned by root. Now who am I? I am actually a different user. I am not the root user. Who am I? You can see that the username is printed there. So the username is not matching the owner here, and therefore this folder, for example, I cannot do much. So let us try to create an empty file in this folder by, let us say, file 1, and you see that there's an error that comes, permission denied, because we don't have right permissions. Okay, and how do I know that? ls minus la, and for the current directory, which is root directory, there are no right permissions for others, and my username is not matching the root, therefore I am other user, and therefore I don't have right permission, so I can't create a file in this particular folder. Okay, so that is how the denial happens for the creation of files. Now even for accessing the folders also there could be permission denials, and we will explore that in the var folder. So let us go to the var folder and then to the log folder, and this is a place where the access logs, system logs, etc. are all kept. Okay, so here you see that most of the files are owned by root or syslog process and in a different group, etc. So here there are many files which are actually not owned. There are many files which do not have a read permission for others, and in this case we are other user, so we don't have a read permission. So syslog, we don't have a read permission. Let us scroll up and see. With the mouse button I scroll up and see whether I have a read permission in any other files. So I have a file here, alternatives.log, in which the others will have a read permission. So let us go ahead and see whether we can read it. Okay, so what we do is, there is a command called less, which actually allows you to read a text file page by page, and at the end of the content you can actually come out of it by pressing Q. Okay, and we are using bash, so we could actually type a few characters of a file name and press tab, and it will fill the file name for you, so you don't have to type the entire file name accurately. Okay, now I just press here and you can see some output that is coming onto the screen from the file alternatives.log, and which means that I am able to read this file, and I have come to the bottom of the page and it shows here end, and I press Q to come out of it. So I have a read permission, and therefore I am able to read this file using the less command. Now let me see if I can change the permission with the right permission. So let's see, chmod others, I want to give right permission for this file. Okay, I am an other user, so I want to give a right permission, and you see that it is denied. Why is it denied? because when we go and scroll up and see here, it is owned by root. Okay, only root can change the permissions of files owned by root. So anybody can change permissions of a file only when they are owners of that particular file. So here the ownership is given to the root, and that is one of the safety mechanisms by which an ordinary user cannot actually change permissions to do any modifications to that particular file. However, read permissions are given. Now there are some files for which read permissions are not given. Okay, so let us see if we can actually read them. Okay, so let us say less and ubuntu advantage.log. Okay, I want to read this file. Here you see this file. Okay, there is a log file which the permissions are not available, and I want to try and read it, and you can see that it doesn't get through because the read permissions are not there. Okay, now this is a folder. What are the kind of permissions in this folder? Let us see. The folder itself, the current directory, doesn't have any write permission for others also. So which means that I can't create any folder here either. Make dir level 1 failed. Okay, I can't create folders there because this folder is owned by root. Okay, touch file 1, I can't create an empty file here because the folder doesn't have write permissions for others. So you can see that there is a mechanism in place where we cannot actually create files or change permissions or create directories in locations where they are belonging to the system and the operating system, and we cannot actually override those settings unless we are super user. Okay, so how to override it and doing something knowingly and carefully what is required for system administration is something that we will come to know as we go along in this course. For now, I want to also show you one more permission that can be denied. If you see here, this particular folder, unattended upgrades, you can see that there is no X permission given for others, which means that I can't even change directory to that particular folder. Okay, I cannot even cd to that. So let me try that. Cd unattended, and I just fill that with a tab character and try it out, and it says permission denied. I can't even enter that directory. So this is how the operating system has secured itself from ordinary users, so that there are folders which you can't enter, there are folders which you can't write to, and there are files that you can't read, and whatever is available to you with the read permission, that is all that you can play with by reading, but there is nothing more that you can do. So naturally you don't have to worry much as a novice user when you are running around with the commands, simple commands like ls, cd or cp and such things. You really cannot do too much of any damage to the operating system, and you can go ahead and explore the file system hierarchy and try to read text files wherever you find them. Now how do I know which file is a text file and which file is actually a binary file? So for that, let me go to the user bin. Okay, and there are a lot of files here, and I just pick up the last one and just see what is that file. So there is a command called file where it will tell you what kind of a file that is. So in user bin directory, the file called znew happens to be a ASCII text, and it is an executable string. It's an executable script. Okay, so ASCII text means that I can read it on the screen. So let me try that out, and you see that I am able to read it. Okay, it just opens and shows you the script. Okay, so we will understand the script by the end of this course, so do not worry. For now we are able to read it. Now let us look at another such executable, whether it is a script or is it a binary file. Let us look at that. Now it appears that the last file zoom is a symbolic link to something else. Okay, now let us go there and see what it is. So zoom launcher happens to be here. And you see that it now gives a different kind of an output. It says it is an ELF 64-bit, okay, LSB shared object for the architecture x86-64 and so on. This actually means that this is a binary file. Okay, we can't read it. So let us try if it is possible, and what happens. And you see that it is alerting you, saying that this is a binary file, so do you want to really see it? We will say no, because it will actually appear in a garbled manner on a text screen, and therefore we will not attempt that. So you can see that you can actually find out what type of a file it is by using the file command. You can try it also on the directories. File zoom, and it says it's a directory. Go one level up, file opt, it says it's a directory. Come to home directory, try it on, come to home directory, try it on level 1, and it says it's a directory. Go to that level 1, try it on file 1, and it says it's an empty file. Okay, so you can see that you can actually find out what type of a file it is, and whether it is a directory or a regular file, is a text file or an executable, binary, etc., using the file command. And you can also explore what is there in the system for you to read using these commands. Now let us spend a few minutes about the timestamp also. So the timestamp at this moment is given by the command date, and if you look at the directories, some of them are actually quite old because they have been modified long back. So if you look at the desktop folder, for example, it is modified on July 28, it says. Now I want to change the timestamp, so I could do the one thing. I can just use touch command, and then I can run ls-l again, and you now see that the timestamp has changed. You can see here the timestamp is 25 November 1650, and before the touch it is actually July 28, 2020. So what it implies is that this file desktop folder was having a timestamp which was old, and the command touch desktop has changed the last modified timestamp to the current timestamp. So that's how the timestamp has been changed. So the command touch can actually make some of the files look like they are new or newly edited, and if you give a file name which doesn't exist, then the touch command will actually create that file as an empty file and show it to you. So let us try that out. So you can see that I have just touched a file called XAA, and there is no such file, and what it does is it doesn't complain, it just goes on to create an empty file with the latest timestamp, and then shows that as a file in the list of files, and then we have it as a part of the files in the home directory. So we have seen in this session some important commands which are very useful for a day-to-day operation, such as chmod to change the permissions of a file. Of course, ls-l shows you what are those permissions, and then chmod allows you to change those. And touch command is there to create empty files or to change the timestamp of any file. cp is to create a copy of a file. mv is to rename or relocate a file. mkdir is to create directories. rm is to remove a file.